Hi, I'm Dina Deleasa-Gonsar here with Holly Newton, and we are back with the She Lives Fearless podcast live.
Here we are.
Not over Zoom.
This is not spliced.
No, it is not. We are in the same place at the same time because we are bringing a very special series to you. If you joined in last time, you learned about our Cultivate Bible study. And this is something that we put into place to continue to connect with you after the conference. And last week we talked a lot about faith and what cultivating faith looks like, some of our favorite women in the Bible, and what we felt were the steps we could take practically in our own lives to continue to grow that faith, to bump that faith.
Yeah, we're calling it training.
Yes, we're calling it training, not discipline.
They really are disciplines, but we're going to call it training.
We're going to call it training grounds because it sounds a lot less like getting demerits.
Exactly, exactly. Which God's not about demerits. But yeah, we really do want to help you cultivate your faith, because when we do that, it cultivates, I think, Dina, purpose and possibility. And that's what we're talking about. Because we want to see you live in your full purpose and possibility, for sure.
And that's exciting stuff. So it's not all grunt work. It's not all just like, oh, things I have to do. There's a purpose to it. The deeper you go with the Lord, the more He's able to show you.
Exactly.
And that's exciting. And I feel like once you tap into that, it's very motivating.
Oh yeah. Once you start to see some of those results, it's really nice. Like you know, when you get that little bicep popping up or whatever.
I'm thinking about like the 10-week program. I was just telling you about this fitness program. All right, but I digress because my verse talks about bread, and that doesn't work with fitness programs apparently.
All right.
But I was in Proverbs recently, and we're talking about wisdom, and Proverbs is like, it beats you over the head with wisdom over and over. It's known for that. And I joked around and said recently while reading it, I'll admit, I got annoyed. Probably because I don't like people telling me what to do. No, I'm kidding. But I felt like every other verse was just like, do not rely on your own wisdom. Stop doing it. Stop doing it. And it's probably because it's one of my favorite things to do is just rely on myself and reason with myself, talk to myself.
Get inside your own head.
Get myself good and anxious on the train, and then I'll go to God and say, why didn't you tell me? Or,
you know, hey,
sorry.
Maybe if you would have turned to me.
Exactly. So I think the unrest and the check I had in my spirit was like, there's 100 different ways of me telling you to not to be foolish, not to go by your emotions, not to go searching for answers in other places. And that's, I think I'm in Proverbs 28 and verse 19. It says, he who cultivates his land will have plenty of bread, but he who follows worthless people and pursuits will have poverty enough. And that just kind of rang some bells in my
what did it ring? Okay, first of all, I love the fact that it's cultivate, but I want to know, like, how did that hit you? So I identify with what you're saying, and I think most people do, because we do, it's, you know, we live in a generation like we talked about on the earlier episode where we have so much information accessible to us, and we want to know how things are going to turn out. So I think sometimes we do rely, even with good intentions, on our own selves, what we see around us that's working, because it just makes sense to us. And so what we're talking about is really tapping into the wisdom of God. And I think that's what Proverbs is about.
And I love that you said sense. It makes sense to us. And I've been learning a lot about in my own walk that what makes worldly sense is just putting God and His limitless power. It's like I'm trying to limit it. I'm trying to put it in this box of what makes worldly sense. And I'm limiting myself and my ability to walk in the purpose He has for me because I'm only doing up until the point of what makes sense.
To us.
To
your own mind, to what's worked before, what you think can work in the future.
And how is that cultivating faith? How is that cultivating wisdom? How is that cultivating peace? Because it all points back to me relying on myself, which is kind of like what this verse is saying, if you're following, worthless people, pursuits, those are all things we set up for ourselves and we subscribe to ourselves. We were saying, what's our inbox full of? What newsletters are we subscribing to? What people are we following on social media? Sometimes I hate going back and beating the dead horse of social media, but it's very telling. You look at your feed and you look at your inbox and like, this is the world I'm building for myself.
Yeah.
And how often do we go to these things to spend time reading or spend time forming our vision boards of life, or where we get our information from, instead of spending time referring back to the word, and not just reading the plain like black and white word, but reading it and spending time sitting there thinking, well, what are you trying to say to me, God? Like, what were you trying to show me here? Because I didn't open up this book to this. I really do believe that. Like, we don't open up the book to the page, and it's not because he doesn't have something for us in that moment and in that time.
Oh, I agree with that. And not to interrupt you, but the word is breathing and living, and we know that. And so, this scripture may mean something to you today.
Yes.
But Dina, in a couple months, this. It may mean something
completely
different or building upon. And that's why we're referring to scripture a lot in here and say, you go ask the questions, you go find the answers. What is God speaking to you? Because we can give different pieces of advice and the top tips, that kind of thing of what we've learned, and we do
life
that.
Hacks. Who doesn't love a good hack?
Yeah, exactly. And we need to do that, but there's also a deeper level. No matter if you're in the marketplace, if you're at home, if you're in ministry, God has something profound to speak to us, and that's what we're tapping into. I think when we're tapping into His wisdom, and Proverbs 3:7 on day 5 of this third week, it's talking about not being wise in your own eyes. And so it's not saying, hey, you're not capable. In fact, you are capable. God has made you capable. But it's like fearing the Lord, putting that first. I mean, it's so hard to do when we're so self-reliant. And that is that surrender, that daily surrender, that sacrifice of going, okay, I may think I've got it today, but God, I know, I'm still going to need you.
Exactly.
And I need your, I don't know, you can just do so much more with Him. I can think of a lot of ideas, and I'm a visionary, but when I go and I spend time with God, I'm telling you, it's like those ideas become amped. And I get the strategies and the timing. There's timing. To things,
to the wisdom,
and
and you can see that God also uses unconventional ways to teach as well. Like, a lot of us don't like walking through those valleys, and we don't like the trials. But I've said before that sometimes, recently, I've learned the valley isn't the worst place, because that's where He teaches you the most. That's where you end up relying the most on Him, and that's where you show yourself what you're capable of through Him. So, and it's just like He can make a way, in the wilderness. He can make that spring up. That's one of His promises, and knowing that makes walking those valleys, I wouldn't say easier, but it gives them more of a purpose, where at least at the end of the day, this is hard, this is tough, but it's not all for nothing, because
it's
eventually,
never for nothing.
Exactly. I don't want to go through it, but we always hear that phrase, beauty for ashes. But you wouldn't know those phrases, and you wouldn't know those things if you weren't seeking His wisdom.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I don't know about you, Dina, but I've had times where I've walked through valleys and I didn't do it with the Lord. And then I've had times where I'm like, okay, I know how to do this now. I know what the answer is, and I do. And I come out the other side better, or stronger, with more understanding, more resolve, with those muscles trained.
Yes.
And, I've heard, it's a saying, you can't know the God of the mountain without knowing the God in the valley.
Exactly.
I think there's a lot of truth in that, because if you think about it, what you discover about God in those valley times, in those wilderness times, in the middle of the thing, you cannot discover any other place.
For sure.
You
And
know?
that's interesting. I recently was talking to my mom, and I had made the comment to her. I said, I know what I went through with Sienna, with her coming early, that whole situation with the NICU and the depression. Had I not walked through that, and you'll hear me say it at the conference, had I not walked through that and experienced God's deliverance and His restoration, and had known how that all worked, I might not have been able to walk the road with cancer easier, or that I always did it with flying colors. But when I approached it, I said, all right, I've seen something pretty bad before, and I've seen you bring me through it. So let me try to steward this well. That was my prayer in that season. It wasn't, what do I do? Where are we going to go? It might have been more like that in the first time around with the depression and what. It was a new thing, a new valley to me. And this time I was looking at it like, I know we're going to go through it. And I know there's going to be darkness. But help me steward it well. So when I come out the other side, because I have faith that I will, I want to know that I did it learning and digging in with you and not just wasting the valley.
That's right.
So,
it's a building upon.
For sure.
Yeah, and that's when we also talk a lot about recall.
Yeah.
Because that builds our faith. Like, I've seen you do it before, so I know you can do it again, even though this time might look a little different.
Yes.
And honestly, in my life right now, I have a situation, I'm like, this looks a lot like it did maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Like a situation that kind of mimics. I'm like, I thought I was through that.
Yeah.
You know, but then I'm like, oh yeah, I see it. So it's not the same, but I'm applying the same principles I learned back then to the current situation. And it's not a bad thing to do that. In fact, it's like, it's reminding me. It's that memory, muscle memory.
Yes.
It comes back, and I'm like, okay, I know how to walk through this.
It's almost like wisdom isn't, like godly wisdom isn't about asking why and acquiring information like an encyclopedia. It's almost
that's true.
Like knowing who God is will help you with whatever it is you're going through. It's not knowing the why, it's not knowing the how of everything, but it's knowing when to surrender and when to go to Him. It's knowing, it's those reflexes.
Yes.
It's
and
those
then,
W's.
And then, it's those W's. And then it's so fun. It's like a full circle thing. It all comes back to wisdom. It all comes back to those things that irritate us.
And then kind of it ties in with faith. Like all these things that we have in the Cultivate, in the devotional here, all ties together. You can't have one
faith
without the other, and you have to be intentional in kind of like tying all these bows together, because in serving Him, it's going to serve you and to serve your soul and to only grow your relationship deeper.
That is so true. And I love this verse. It's in day 1 for the introduction for week 3. It's James 3:17, but it says, but the wisdom from above is first pure, peace-loving, gentle, compliant, full of mercy and good fruits, unwavering, without pretense.
That's such a peaceful.
It is peaceful.
I know as we were talking about peace, but there's a peacefulness in having the wisdom of the Lord, and that verse, just like saying it, just calms you down. So I even feel like for those joining us with this study, if you're feeling restless, if you're feeling like your boat's being tossed and turned, like just read that verse over and over again and try to commit to surrendering to Him. Like, I don't have to have all this figured out.
We don't have to lean into gut instincts. We don't have to.
I don't need this answer right now, not in my timing, but in your timing. And
that's good.
Just like watch yourself.
Watch
your soul just like settle.
Watch yourself before you wreck yourself.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself. So with that peaceful thought, I think that's a good place to tie it up for this week. I'm excited for the weeks ahead. I think what's our last little meeting going to be on the series?
Yes, the last one will be cultivating rest. So
I like that.
next week is cultivating identity, which is a big one.
For sure.
And they're all big, but I think cultivating rest is equally as important because it's something we need but we don't do.
Maybe we'll have some spa music
Maybe
running
so.
through that video. I don't
Spa
know.
sponsors out there, just email us.
I could really use a good spa day.
We'll take it. We'll take it. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to being back with you again next time.